Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today with our another SD Wan webinar. SD Wan, or rather software-defined wide area network, is a proven technology that delivers scalability, affordability, as well as flexibility to businesses that require it, especially when you think about today's ever-evolving technological landscape. Now, many companies who are looking to increase network resilience and control have adopted SD-WAN. However, there is still a significant confusion about SD-WAN, including a number of myths. In this environment, we'd like to explore the misconceptions on this forum surrounding SD-WAN and perhaps clear the air. But before we start, I would like to introduce you to our panel. Firstly, we have Jonathan Clark from First Distribution. Jonathan provides technical support and training, and he's been in the service-based industry for over 22 years. Hi, Jonathan.
Morning, Jeanette. Morning, everybody.
Morning, morning. And then we have Richard Frost, based in PE. He is our Head of Product for Cybersecurity at Armata. And he specializes, and he has spent the last 25 years working in the ICT industry, particularly specializing in cybersecurity. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Jeanette. Thank you. And yeah, looking forward to this webinar.
Yes, indeed. Then, yeah, as always to our audience, please feel free to post your questions in the chat window. We will leave some time at the end of the webinar for any questions that you might have. We will also be recording this webinar, so it will be available at the end of we'll send it to you. Right, Jonathan, I'd like to start with you. Could you explain the purpose of SD-WAN in layman's terms to a non-technical person?
Certainly. SD-WAN allows us to expand past what a network port natively does. We can take that information and give it different purposes. We can give priority to certain traffic, off traffic over others, sorry. We can route traffic to save costs. You can also have redundancy that only gets used when you need it. Taking a hardware solution and giving it power through software and smart design.
So, John, in the beginning, we want to uncover many misconceptions surrounding SD-WAN. So let's look at a few statements and beliefs around that and discuss the validity. So the first one I would like to cover is the understanding that SD-WAN is designed only for businesses with multiple branches. Would you agree with this statement?
Yes and no. This is only a small part of what we can offer with SD-WAN. With SD-WAN, you can make a network more efficient, better managed, and better utilized. In a single branch environment, it can be used to streamline traffic, using more expensive connection methods more effectively, and critical services to be given priority over non-critical, and also for redundant architecture. If one link goes down, another one comes up or picks up the slack.
So it's definitely an option for a business that's got a single site business.
Definitely.
Okay. Now, another belief out there is that SD-WAN will replace MPLS. Jonathan, could you explain the difference between the two and whether you agree with this statement?
So in the long run, I think, yes, this might be a belief, but no, it's certainly not the purpose of SD-WAN. MPLS is a method of connecting multiple branches together which work on a predefined path, connecting these branches together to share resources like data servers, warehouses for dispatch, etc. Problems with MPLS is that it's not available everywhere and can be time consuming to get deployed. It can also be very costly. SD-WAN offers what MPLS does without the need to stick to a specific service, for example, LTE or fiber. It can allow you to connect across all of them being used at different locations and different times. If you use redundancy configurations and design, it will switch connection types and maintain your connection. Because of this flexibility, you can deploy quicker and almost anywhere there is sufficient connectivity. SD-WAN won't fix a bad connection. but it can help you use what you have more effectively.
Oh.
SD-WAN is, however, also capable of using a MPLS connection in its design. So it's certainly not there to replace it, but it can make it more efficient. For example, instead of routing all traffic to the head office, then out to the internet, you can break out locally to the internet and only send the info that must go to the head office, thus reducing throughput and cleaning up the MPLS for use of priority traffic.
Okay, Jonathan, another statement that needs to be clarified is that SD-WAN is too complicated to implement. How would you respond to that?
Not at all. I use Fortinet to do this, and depending on the size of your deployment, you can do this in almost no time at all. I've manually deployed a 9-site SD-WAN infrastructure using a mesh design as opposed to a hub and spoke, meaning that all the branches could communicate with each other without needing to go through another branch or head office. The reason for this method was because each branch was responsible for a specific job in the business. So the deployment took roughly 5 hours manually. However, using the FortiManager, I did the same deployment in about 45 minutes, and I can add additional sites to this configuration within minutes.
Okay, so you can have a pop-up site up and running very quickly.
Definitely.
Richard, let's go to you and speak about the security surrounding SD-WAN. There's a belief that SD-WAN increases the risk of a breach. How would you comment on this statement?
Yeah, thanks, Jeanette. I think what we need to do firstly is look at the SD-WAN technology and distinguish between a standard typical SD-WAN and a secure SD-WAN environment. So your SD-WANs, because of the level of security that's given with, say, a standard low-level SD-WAN solution, it kind of almost follows that same principle of hub and spoke, effectively where each branch has to go through to the head office in order to break out onto the internet. And I mean, if you look at the old days, we mentioned the MPLS technology. Clients used to put firewalls down with VPN tunnels across the MPLS environment to kind of secure the network. And SD-WAN, you kind of need to look at it in the same way. So from a secure SD-WAN perspective, you still have those VPN overlays, you still have all of your traffic being encrypted and tunneled site to site, but it also allows you things like local breakout. So if you have a secure SD-WAN solution, which 99% of the time is based off of a firewall, you can actually utilize on your fiber breakout locally onto the internet rather than having to go all the way through to the head office. So I think the misconceptions about SD-WAN and security are not entirely true. Even SD-WAN technologies that you buy that doesn't come with normal firewall type security, you can actually link to a firewall to provide that VPN overlay or some level of security. There's products like Netscope, where you can have your normal SD-WAN technology talking to Netscope to provide that layer of security on top of the normal SD-WAN infrastructure. So yeah, I don't think it necessarily increases the chance of a breach, but again, it depends on how much security you're putting in place on your SD-WAN.
Okay. Staying with security as a topic, Richard, currently PAPIA is top of mind for all businesses. They all have to be on a PAPIA journey and comply, especially considering how breaches have increased in recent years. How, in your opinion, does SD-WAN play a role when it comes to PAPIA?
So I think one of the benefits of SD-WAN is we can utilize broadband technologies and LTE and 5G and all of that as kind of redundancy or as your primary link. It means that you have more access to the internet. It means that you can start utilizing cloud-based services a lot easier, which means a lot of our data is starting to move into the cloud. And I think from a PAPIA perspective, there's a lot more emphasis on who's got access to what data. And because of the fact that we can now go out onto the cloud a lot easier, we're putting more of our data into the cloud. So I think where SD-WAN has the advantage, and especially the secure SD-WAN, it starts offering you technologies like zero trust, the ability to create tunnels right through to the cloud, so you can secure your data that's sitting in the cloud through to the branch. there's a whole lot of different data segmentation things that you can do, the way we do the flows, the way we manage it, the way we prioritize it, the way we do the encryption across the links, all that kind of stuff enhances your security. So while SD-WAN is giving you more access to the cloud and speeding up your experience of the cloud, there are also security things that you can put in place, protocols you can put in place that will actually help you to secure that. So I think from a POPIA perspective, SD-WAN actually helps you to become more POPIA compliant.
Okay, depending obviously if you have a solution that includes that security.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I think as well, just to Jeanette, just to finish off, and it's not just POPIA. If you think about global standards like GDPR, PCI, DSS, even HIPAA, the medical companies are looking at SD-WAN as well. And again, they need to make sure that they're adopting the correct security protocols and all the technology they install. And I think secure SD-WAN covers all of that and helps you remain compliant to those standards as well.
Okay, all right. Jonathan, SD-WAN and zero-touch provisioning goes hand in hand, especially if you look at marketing material. Is it true, though, that you do not need engineers on site when implementing SD-WAN?
Unfortunately not. For the first deployment, the device will need to be connected to the internet, and it can be configured from there either using the manager or manually. But someone obviously has to set that up the first time, and that is dependent on each client and their premises. Unfortunately, one size doesn't fit all in this case. With SD-WAN also, planning is essential because you're going to be linking multiple sites together in potential. There's IP addressing, subnets, and planning that has to happen to make the system operate correctly. Existing sites will need to be migrated to SD-WAN if they have an existing device. I'll use Fortinet as an example. If the device is licensed for standard UTP, you can switch between SD-WAN setup and a conventional setup without needing a new license or to reconfigure the entire device. Fortinet does, however, offer zero-touch provisioning. So once the device is being connected to the internet, it will phone home in a manner of speaking. The FortiCloud server will then send a template configuration to the FortiGate.
Okay. There's also belief, Jonathan, that SD-WAN will cut costs in half. Is this true? Would you agree with this?
Again, yes and no. Because it is so flexible, you can use almost any connection on your site. So if you utilize MPLS, it will still need to be paid for, but it will make it more efficient. A site I was involved in, for example, was spending 250,000 Rand on MPLS. And by changing this to an SD-WAN network utilizing just fiber and LTE, conventional, we were able to bring this down to 74,000 Rand. But you could look at it from an OPEX point of view. And by utilizing an SD-WAN configuration, you can improve productivity and efficiency in the environment, and thus potentially making more without it costing more.
Yeah, okay, so it's looking more at the long-term cost of it.
Yes.
So Jonathan, there are many vendors offering SD-WAN. Are all SD-WAN solutions equal?
There are several, but they are certainly not the same. Because it is a software-based solution, each vendor can offer different options and features. Fortinet, for example, offers secure SD-WAN. So all your traffic is still scanned and tested when using SD-WAN versus conventional environment system. They offer an SLA on line conditions, where some might only switch when a line goes completely down.
All right. Jonathan, is it possible for any business to roll out SD-WAN on their own? Or should I rather ask, is it advisable?
They can certainly do it on their own, but they will need competent, trained technicians. But in my opinion, it's better to ask their service provider for a solution. Possibly there's a benefit to getting it all done by them. The service provider will have trained staff and can also maintain the SD-WAN from their side as well, being that the business will have access to the firewall or SD-WAN device and the information it provides, whereas the service provider will also have access to connectivity status and on a much more informed level. And possibly they've even got broader offerings to assist the companies in these deployments.
Yeah, so a service provider would essentially then provide a more holistic solution rather than just focusing on SD-WAN.
Definitely, it brings it to a central point of management. So
yes,
yeah.
I think, Jeanette, maybe just to elaborate on that as well. I mean, from your service provider, they already have technologies in place to do that central management that Jonathan's mentioned. So they can, add you on as a customer and at a lower cost to you provide you a service. So they can give you the central management, they can give you the reporting, and then they've got the skills to maintain your SD-WAN environment. We spoke about the zero touch provisioning. If there is a change, your service provider using those tools can provision the new sites a lot more efficiently than not having the tools in place. So I think there are pros and cons. If you're looking at skilling up your own staff, it becomes more expensive. You have to put all those managers and reporting tools in, whereas your service provider, they all have those skills already, and they have the technologies in place ready to provide that service. So I think for a customer, it's just weighing up, do I want to do this myself or would I like somebody else to do it?
Also, do you rather want to focus on what your business, your core business is, rather than have a paid resource looking after SD-WAN, and it's probably not their speciality?
100% correct.
Definitely, your service provider will keep their staff skilled, whereas your business, as you say, focus on what you do. Let us help you do it.
Yeah. All right. SD-WAN can also handle global networks. Would you agree with this statement, Jonathan?
Certainly. Sorry, yes. So it can definitely handle global networks. And in Fortinet's case, you can even limit it to specific countries. So all over the world, but you leave out the ones where you know you have no devices, securing your SD-WAN network even further.
Okay. Jonathan, another question. Does SD-WAN eliminate the need for on-premises hardware?
No, definitely not. It's always safest to have equipment on site in the sense of a firewall. You'll always need something on site to manage your connectivity. Depending on what SD-WAN solution you're needing, you'll also always need a means of connecting to the internet, whether that be fiber, LTE, Wi-Fi, etc. There will always be something on site.
Okay, then this is a question to both you and Richard, Jonathan. Richard, let me start with you. When a customer is exploring, if we're looking at all the SD-WAN options that are available, what should a customer be considering when choosing SD-WAN solution? Richard, let's start with you.
Yeah, Jeanette, I think we've kind of touched on a lot of the points already in our general conversations. So I think from an SD-WAN, the first thing to do is to have a look at your budget considerations. What technology is going to be best suited for your budget versus functionality. Then working with a provider that can actually help you from a capabilities perspective. If you're going to be doing just buying hardware, installing it yourself, do you have the in-house capabilities to do that? Look at the user interface for that deployment, and the management thereof. What does the technology offer? There's some technologies out there where you literally have to remote into each device to configure them. They don't have central management. It's easier to have some kind of web-based user manager that you can log in and look at your entire SD-WAN deployment in one screen and configure from there, which then obviously leads to the whole zero touch provisioning aspects. Once you've set up a template for your SD-WAN, it's a lot easier to push it to each site. And again, that's done through the central manager. I think reliability is a key factor. Look at the technologies that have got a proven record of not having to be replaced as often. Technologies that we have in our stable, for argument's sake, You know, we've seen a couple of them that have been running for years without needing even a reboot, let alone being replaced. And again, you know, from a reliability perspective, it also talks to the WAN itself. So when you do your SD-WAN, make sure that you've got redundancies built in place for the fiber and for the LTE. So if the fiber goes down, you've got an LTE backup or something like that, or running 2 fibers onto 2 different networks. So if the one fiber fails, you've got the other fibers backup. Security is a big aspect depending on how you're going to use that SD-WAN. If you're running on MPLS, or if you're running a hub and spoke, your security will be dealt with by the firewall in the data center. If the technology supports tunneling from the SD-WAN device to the firewall to give you a security overlay, that's one, you know, way of looking at it. But there's also the secure SD-WAN technologies that are kind of, you know, security built in on the platform. And I think that's a lot more secure because you know, people can't really get past the security of the device as easily as, you know, if you have a tunnel that's been created from a third-party type of connectivity. The management we've spoken about, but again, you know, if a device goes down, it's a lot easier to push new configs or do upgrades of firmware from your central manager and keep your SD-WAN running. And I think at the end of the day, again, it's all about the customer experience. So, you know, you want to make sure that the SD-WAN solution is going to give you the best, you know, customer experience from how you do your work. And remember, again, that points to your overall ROI, your return on investment. If your SD-WAN solution improves business and you can transact a lot more efficiently, you can do more transactions, that means your business is going to do well. So, you know, you kind of offset the cost of putting the SD-WAN in by the return on investment of productivity. The customer before, where for argument's sake they were struggling to use their main dispatching application, and after deploying SD-WAN, they had an improved performance. They actually increased productivity by 20 times what they were doing before, just off of SD-WAN. And then lastly, work with a partner that's an expert in the area. You know, you need to work with somebody that's going to be able to support you. If there's a device failure, they need to be able to go out and replace that device for you. They need to carry stock. You need to make sure that they can configure any eventuality that you have. If there's a change or there's new technologies you want to add, they need to be able to adapt to that as well. Yeah, that's pretty much from my side.
John, you got anything else to add?
The only thing I would add, I mean, Richard covered pretty much everything, is something that the companies need to take in mind is what functionality are they wanting from the system? What are they trying to accomplish? And I mean, if they come to either Richard or Richard comes to me, if they talk redundancy, branch to branch, multi-branch, we can design and hash out the solutions for them. And with companies obviously giving budgets, you know, okay, we've only got ABC for equipment, you know, we could take that ABC and change it into ABCDEF, because we're going to save them expenses in areas they never knew they could save money. So coming back to can someone deploy it themselves? Yes. Should they? Probably not. You know, we have these means and it's what we do. So they just need to give us what do they want to accomplish, and we can go from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's as well, Jeanette, if you look at SD-WAN in general, you know, we've mentioned the fact that you have the internet breakout capability. By having redundancy built in, by having the options of doing load balancing and stuff through SD-WAN, it improves the performance of your links. If you look at it from the WAN optimization perspective, we have the ability to segment the environment so you can keep your voice traffic prioritized on its own stream, so it doesn't get impacted by other things. You know, your business critical applications, we can actually prioritize them. So if you have an example that an organization that does allow Facebook, you can give email and you can give your business applications priority over the Facebook. So again, it's all down to your user experience. And I think, you know, the better the SD-WAN technology is, especially your you know, more secure SD-WAN technologies that are out there, you can streamline it and you can optimize your application traffic across your links a lot better. And thus you can make your business more efficient while taking away maybe some of the non-critical application performance. You know, we've seen organizations where the security guards are sitting watching Netflix the whole day, you know, and the guys can't understand why the applications are so slow. Whereas, you know, something like a 48 firewall, we can do application mapping, and we can actually, excuse me one sec, we can actually see that, we can profile the traffic, and then we can put controls in place to actually streamline that application.
Okay, all right.
The flu season, sorry about that, folks.
No worries. Richard, could you explain, I mean, we know that there's Vox and there's Vivica Holdings and Amata. Can you explain how Amata fits into all of this?
Yeah, Jeanette, so I think maybe just to start off, I think the Vox Holding Company is rebranded now as Vivica Holdings. Very exciting times. I think we've started building some incubator companies within the Vivica group, Amata being one of them. Our focus is going to be very specifically on cybersecurity. You're still going to have the traditional Vox from an ISP perspective, and Amata is going to be providing the cybersecurity, you know, independently. You know, so it's not just for Vox customers. We can, you know, talk to any customer out there, but specifically from a Vox perspective, you have the ability to now come to Amata and say, you know, I've got this fiber and LTE environment. We're looking at SD-WAN. You know, and as Amata, we can provide you with an SD-WAN solution, either as a traditional SD-WAN or as a secure SD-WAN. We can provide managed services on top of that, as we spoke about, you know, doing that provisioning for you, management for you, ensuring that your applications are being optimized and managed correctly. And I think, you know, taking it a little bit further, you know, we're starting to look at things like proactive event notifications and even automation of problem resolution. So we have technologies like, you know, your SIEM and your SAW in the SOC, where we can actually automate specific processes. So if there's an incident like a ransomware or a phishing attack, you know, we can actually go and tell the firewall, you know, go and block the ransomware communication to the command and control server. In other words, you know, the encryption key exchange. So these are all the different services we're starting to add in. And I think, you know, from an SD-WAN perspective, it's quite a simple thing now. You come to us, you tell us this is what we want to do. We have solution architects, we have consultants that can help you build an overall solution. And then we can, you know, tell you what the recommended technology is based on your solution design, and we can give you pricing on it. And literally we can offer it to you as an outright CapEx purchase or as a monthly OpEx-based rental, you know, right to use type solution.
The various options available.
100%. You could do it over a 12-month or a 36-month, however you want.
Yes, yes. All right, guys. I think it's time for a few audience questions. Let's see if we have any. I can see one has got 3 here. So I'll throw this out to Jonathan. Is SD-WAN not the same as WAN optimization?
No, it isn't. WAN optimization, also known as WAN acceleration, depending on what brand and device you use, it's a collection of technologies used to improve the efficiency of data transfer across a wide area network. SD-WAN is a technology of its own, and in many ways, it's eliminating the need for WAN optimization appliances. So in some ways, they do the same jobs, but not all the same jobs.
Okay. Here's another one. Richard, I think I'm going to throw this out to you. Do I still need SD-WAN if my internet is good enough?
Define good enough. Yeah, so I think, you know, it doesn't matter how good the performance is of your environment. There's always a need for load balancing. There's always a need for redundancy. You know, if your internet connection is very good, but it might not be as stable as you'd like, you know, look at SD-WAN as an option, because it does give you that ability to use something like an LTE as a backup. You could use a second, you know, fiber link through a different carrier as a redundancy as well. So, you know, it doesn't matter how good anything is. If it fails, it's down. So yeah, redundancy is quite key in that, and I think that's one of the key benefits of SD-WAN.
100%.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Jonathan, does a router not offer the same functionality as SD-WAN?
Because SD-WAN is so broad, some routers can offer some features of SD-WAN, like load balancing or even failover. But I think your conventional off-the-shelf routers, as I would describe them, it's not the same thing.
Okay, so definitely rather go with SD-WAN than if you need that sort of functionality.
Go for a device that is built for it. Like I said, I like Fortinet. The newer range of F devices, for example, have a processor built in, especially for SD-WAN functionality. So it's purpose built to support their traffic. Where I know, I'll say Telkom for one of them, you can get a fiber line, and the router they supply comes with an optional LTE failover. But I mean, it's a USB dongle that plugs into the back of a router. So nothing wrong with it, but the fiber has to be completely off for the LTE to connect. You know, so we're talking failover, not balancing, not line quality, not SL orientated. So yes, I can't say no, they don't, but it's definitely not in the same league.
Yeah, yeah.
I think unfortunately, maybe just to jump in there as well. You know, if you look at vendors like Cisco, you know, they've traditionally been a router manufacturer, and with SD-WAN coming out, they've started bringing in new technologies like Viptela and Meraki. So, you know, if you could do SD-WAN on a router, why would they be bringing out these technologies? I think as well, there's so many new things within the SD-WAN environment that's not available in the traditional SD-WAN type technology, and that would be things like the forward error correction. I mean, it's something we didn't really touch on. You know, the WAN optimization and stuff like that. It's not in your traditional routers. Your MikroTik that you get with your fiber, you might be able to put in a device that will give you the load balancing and the failover aspect. It's not going to give you the security. It's not going to give you that, you know, VPN overlay. It's not going to give you the optimization or the forward error correction that's in the SD-WAN technologies. So I think those are the considerations one needs to think about as well. You know, when we're talking about router versus SD-WAN.
Okay, there's another question. How easy is it to move to SD-WAN? Jonathan?
I'd say as easy as connecting to the internet. Having competent technicians and proper planning, as with any technology deployment, it can be done quickly, efficiently, and correctly. So again, like I said, with Fortinet, it's a matter of a few clicks here, a few clicks there, and you've moved from conventional to SD-WAN. It's not nearly as complicated as people think it is. They can make it complicated. You know, you want specific securities, you want Facebook on your fiber, but you want phones on your MPLS. You know, you can go very, very in depth, but it's certainly not difficult.
Yeah, and I think again, just to add to that, Jeanette, you know, you know, a lot of the times you do your proper planning on an SD-WAN, the first thing you need to do is look at the underlying infrastructure you're going to be putting SD-WAN on. If you're moving from an MPLS environment to fiber, there's obviously a lead time for deploying that fiber and then putting the SD-WAN device in. There's also nothing stopping you in that transition from actually having the SD-WAN devices that are giving you that access on your MPLS environment while you're doing that transition. So when the fiber is ready, you can just swing across. At least you can get some kind of SD-WAN functionality, you know, in that changeover. Especially if you're going from an MPLS to, let's say, an LTE and fiber backup, you can actually run the MPLS and LTE failover aspect while you wait for your fiber to get ready. So I don't think it's you know, something that takes forever. It's all down to what Jonathan said, you know, careful planning and provisioning and ensuring that your timelines and expectations are set correctly.
Okay, I've got another question here. If a customer has multiple MPLS links running, primary and failover, just trying to read it here. talk about quality of service, and he's happy with, sorry guys, I can't see this properly, with the MPLS cars. Would it be worthwhile pushing SD-WAN? So if they are happy with MPLS, the quality of service, what other benefits does SD-WAN provide?
Well,
Jonathan, yeah?
From my point of view, is so they have MPLS, they have primary and failover, so that means they have some sort of SD-WAN or balancing device in place. But if they are using a FortiGate or move over to a FortiGate, you can bring in the whole security aspect. So now both those lines are secure, and with that security, you can again improve the efficiency. You know, we were talking earlier about companies that use Facebook. We're one of them. But the last thing I want to do is have my marketing department send a Facebook post from our Cape Town branch to our Joburg branch so that it can go through the firewall and get posted on Facebook. I would rather route it out locally and not waste all that bandwidth from all the other departments in between that are blocked on Facebook. So you can certainly propose it and explain the benefits of making those MPLS links more efficient and definitely secure. I mean, that's something we can't emphasize enough in this industry or any in South Africa, really. Security, security, security. We should focus on it no matter what. So,
I think,
yeah, Richard, sorry, I interrupted.
no, it's fine. Sorry, I thought you'd finished. I think as well, maybe just to add to it, and you know, I'm speaking from a few years ago, so I'm not sure if there's MPLS providers that are offering this, but traditionally on the MPLS, because of the size of MPLS, you were kind of limited as well to different packages. So you could get like an MPLS gold, silver, or bronze, and your quality of service was determined by that level that you chose. And it's a fixed service. It's not something that was customizable per customer or per link. Whereas if you ran a SD-WAN overlay over the MPLS, you could still utilize that MPLS redundancy, but you could create almost a tunnel across the MPLS environment that will allow you to do your own shaping, your own optimization. And I think if you look at the old WAN optimization technologies that came out, that was the first step in the right direction from an MPLS perspective, where they started taking the load balancing and the compression and all that away from the MPLS provider and started putting it onto the device. And then they moved the quality of service on as well. So if you look at a Riverbed device, for argument's sake, that could do the compression and the WAN optimization and the traffic shaping across an MPLS environment a lot more granular than what the MPLS provider could do. The same with the secure SD-WAN solution. You can actually do that same level of granularity on the firewall level. We spoke about allowing Netflix, using certain amounts of the link, whatever it is. You can do it a lot better with an SD-WAN environment. So you can keep the MPLS, you can utilize what you've got on the MPLS environment. You can put that SD-WAN overlay on to create, better control of your traffic and better security. But then you also have the option of doing that LTE for a complete failover, or maybe, like Jonathan was saying, there's a need to get directly onto the internet. Maybe you have a fiber into the branch as well for internet access. Stops you having to go all the way across the MPLS to Johannesburg to break out, as an example. Maybe Cape Town and, Joburg is actually a satellite branch, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, that's the way I would look at it. Just the added advantage of having the SD-WAN on top just gives you so many more options.
We've got a few more questions. This one I think I'm going to post to Jonathan. Does one need to have ZTNA deployed to get secure tunnels, or would ZTNA be complementary to SD-WAN?
You certainly don't need it, but it would be complementary. With a zero trust network, you are securing things at your endpoint. So with us all working in hybrid networks, even here in my office, I'm using a different wireless as my Fortinet. Traffic from an infected computer can traverse the wireless and the LAN without actually getting to the FortiGate if it's smart enough. So having something on an endpoint will protect the rest of the environment from that, as well as if that same device is now infected at home, when it tries to connect into an office and go over these links, it will be protected from that as well. So it's something to definitely consider, but it's not necessary. In my opinion, stuff that is definitely necessary is things like your antivirus and that. So there's no compromise on that these days. Whether it's Mac, Linux, or Windows, people can say what they want. I've got all three, and I've had viruses on all three. You know, we can protect as much as we want. There are lots of smart guys out there who find ways around this, but every little bit helps. But sorry, to be more specific to your question, no, it's not necessary, but I would recommend it in larger environments, especially with company laptops that go home, or to coin a phrase from one of the Fortinet guys, in a bring your own destruction environment. We need to protect ourselves.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Jeanette,
definitely.
maybe just elaborate a bit more on what Jonathan was saying there from a ZTNA perspective. You know, we spoke about the fact that a secure technology like Fortinet gives you that option of being able to break out locally onto the internet. But it also, using ZTNA, gives you the ability for your user that's sitting in Cape Town to actually attach to the branch in Cape Town directly, rather than having to go all the way via the head office connection or local breakout. So I think there's definitely synergy between ZTNA. And I know as well, there's a lot of technologies, especially in the ZTNA area, where they start, you know, protecting the users that are working directly on the cloud as well. So it kind of allows you to secure that connectivity, maybe through via your company first before you go on to your cloud-based services. So for argument's sake, you know, we've seen it in scenarios where the guys have got a cloud-hosted environment, and the only way you can access is to go via the office. So you almost have to do the VPN access to the office, and from there you can actually connect. The web application firewall only allows specific IP addresses to access the SaaS solution. So the only way to actually access is like you're sitting at the branch, which would be through the ZTNA VPN access.
Okay, here's another MPLS question. Would you recommend replacing low bandwidth and low latency MPLS with SD Wan over broadband internet links? Richard?
I don't know if that's a hell yes. I think if you look at the bandwidth that's available on MPLS, and you look at the costs of what you're getting, you know, the MPLS has still got the old 64Ks, the 128s, whereas your fiber is now looking at, you know, 10 meg and going up to over a gig now. The cost for that bandwidth, I think, is a lot cheaper. But also, why MPLS in my mind is kind of dying is a lot of it is still copper based. Copper's not going to be around for much longer. So until they start offering a fiber-based MPLS environment, 100%, it's always a good idea to look at that. You know, at the moment, the talk from the copper providers is, you know, when something gets stolen or breaks and they have to repair it, it's now being converted to fiber rather. So at some point, MPLS is going to die as a technology, unfortunately.
Okay, here's another question. Has SD-WAN got built-in redundancy, or is it link dependent? Jonathan?
So with Fortinet, in this case, Richard mentioned forward error correction. So that is a redundancy in the actual data transmission. So if packets are lost, there are additional packets sent to correct those problems without the endpoint having to re-request the information. So there is redundancy in that regard. Redundancy, more like I've been talking through the presentation, is a failover concept. So, you know, if fiber goes down, an exchange goes down, LTE, you have something else that you can go onto. I know for a fact that where my office is in Centurion, if we have load shedding, one of the exchanges nearby only lasts about 40 minutes. And then we find we have issues with telephones. So we have an LTE failover. And once that kicks in, the phones work perfectly. until the SLA restores the connectivity between our hosted service, and then it moves back to the fiber. So, you know, little things like that, that's more what I would refer to as redundancy. But yeah, it does have some built in for packet loss and bad transmission, but not in the concept that we've been talking so far. That definitely is dependent on your links and what you have available in your environment.
And I think the next question also links to that, pardon the pun. Can SD-WAN span across different service providers, or am I locked into one ISP or service provider?
No, unfortunately, once you're signed with us, you're locked into us. No, joking. It is actually part of that previous discussion that we had where we were talking about, you know, link redundancy. So to use that analogy that Jonathan mentioned, or the use case that he mentioned, there are providers that have issues with you know, power going out during load shedding. Their batteries maybe don't last as long as some other providers. There's also, you know, the possibility of cables being damaged when, you know, they're fixing a broken pipe or something like that. So it's almost encouraged from a redundancy perspective to either have two different ISPs with two different fibers, so that you can get that kind of redundancy physically, or using an LTE. And I mean, you could come to Vox as an example. You could get a fiber from us, and you could get an LTE from us, or you could go to, you know, Vodacom or MTN and get it from them as well. And you're not kind of fixed to that. The decisions, you know, at the end of the day is up to you. We just kind of hope we offer you, you know, enough incentive to kind of stay with us, but you're not fixed to one. You could have a, for argument's sake, OpenServe fiber on one link, and you could have a Frogfoot fiber for your other link. You know, two totally different providers. There's kind of less risk that way anyway. So it is actually kind of encouraged.
Yeah, definitely.
And not service providers, you're not locked into one technology. That same 9 sites I spoke about, one of their branches has got fiber, they've got LTE backup, they've got a microwave link. This is a farm, so things go down often, but they've also got a 4th link as well, which is a wireless link to the neighboring farm, so that if they go down, they can utilize their connectivity as well. So, you know, I'd almost say the sky's the limit with this, but it's not. Every device obviously has a limit, but you're certainly not locked to a service provider or a technology, which is the beauty of this.
Yes.
You know, those MPLS links, yeah, you've got primary and you've got failover, but, you know, one thing is to go properly wrong and you are buggered. You know, you've got no recourse. Where with redundancy this way, you can even go and get a prepaid SIM card and use it for the day. Yeah, so.
And not just Jonathan, we can use it, and I'm just looking at the questions. This is another question coming up. You can also use those different connection types for load balancing, correct?
Yes. So before 40OS 6.2, I believe it was, SD Wan was actually called load balancing on the 40-gate devices. So with the increased functionality, you know, it's kind of like calling one of these new smart scales that measure your body mass and heart rate and everything a scale. It's not. It's a full body information device. So it had to be rebranded to fit what it does. Yeah, no, you can definitely do that.
Okay. I think this is quite a good question. Can you use different equipments at different sites? Example, and I think you means here vendors. So if you have Cisco, Meraki, can you use the same equipment, or does it need to be all the same, from the same vendor? Richard? Oh, sorry, Jonathan.
Jonathan, you can go first.
From my opinion, keeping it the same makes a lot more sense. Like Richard mentioned earlier, that there can be someone who manages the system for you. If you stick to 40 gates, 40 switches, 40 APs, your service provider needs a 40 manager, and they can sort out your system and maintain it for you. Where if you've got Cisco on one side, 40 gates on another, Meraki on a third. They're all good products. The problem is now you need either one very, very skilled technician with tons of time to travel between sites, or you need 3 different technicians to now maintain these connections. And the interoperability cannot always be guaranteed.
Yeah.
I know, for example, we link a lot of FortiGates to Sophos, and it works, and it works well. But there are days where, depending on the firmware, there's little glitches. So 10 minutes you get it up and running, or this week one of our technicians took 5 hours to get an IPsec stable. And neither company was at fault. It's just little differences. So, you know, in an environment where you've got multiple branches, multiple devices, yes, if you're going to roll out SD-WAN, plan over time to standardize on a product, you know, one particular brand. A lot of people are not happy putting all their nuts in one basket. You know, I'm happy with that too. Fortinet in many ways recommends that. So if you have a edge firewall running your SD-WAN, keep it FortiGate. But if you want internal segmentation, put down a third-party firewall, because it just makes it that much more difficult for the guy from outside to get all the way inside. So it depends on what you're wanting from your system, but mixing and matching across the board, no, it's not a good idea.
I think as well, maybe just elaborate on that a little bit further as well. It's you need to kind of work out what your SD-WAN strategy is. If you're going to go with an SD-WAN secure strategy, you need to make sure that the devices that you have already can support that. Okay, if you're going to add on a different vendor because maybe you want to sweat the original asset a bit and you want to create new sites with new technologies, they need to be, you know, intercompatible. And then you need to think about that whole thing of central management and how easy it is to fix. All right. The other thing that you'll find is some technologies that are out there that you might have. I mean, even from a Fortinet perspective, some of the older technologies don't support SD-WAN. So a lot of the times you have to do a hardware refresh to be able to enable those features. So those are the things you need to think of as well. You could also do something where you could run, you know, Vox has its own SD-WAN Lite solution. So let's give that as an example. And maybe it's not as secure. So you could actually run that and then create tunnels through to the FortiGate to give you your security overlay on top of that. And it works the same with something like a Cisco Meraki, where if you need additional security, you need to integrate it into another technology. There's customers that are using Meraki with Netscope, you know, and kind of using Netscope to provide that kind of security overlay to it. So yeah, you need to make sure that the technologies are compatible. You need to make sure they support your strategy. There might be limitations as well about, you know, the ports that are on your devices, being able to support the LTE and fiber if you're moving from MPLS. And then the other consideration as well is if you are talking about using like Sophos and Fortinet, my only thought would be that you're trying to sweat an existing asset and then, you know, adding new ones where you need to. But if you're going SD-WAN, most of the time you're probably going to replace 90 to 99% of your environment anyway. You might as well make it one vendor.
Okay, Alex is asking, is SD-WAN the same as VPN? Does it basically just prioritize traffic? Jonathan?
No, two very different things. I mean, a VPN connects you to a remote network as if you're there. So when we were all working from home, we need to connect to the office server for whether it be accounting or the office NAS drive. For those of us who don't use cloud for everything, it allows you to connect there. Where SD-WAN is much more than that. It would manage those incoming VPNs. So the big boss would dial in on the 1 gig fiber, and the rest of us would have to fight for the 10 meg fiber. You know, so it would prioritize traffic where it has to go. But your VPN is not the same. VPN, you can have the option of local breakout, depending on your environment and your configuration, but it's in no way going to prioritize your traffic. So if I VPN into the office and I go for Facebook and I'm using my VoIP phone system, and email, they all get the same amount of priority. When it gets to the office and it gets to my FortiGate, then the SD-WAN kicks in and goes, nah, sorry, no Facebook while you're connected to me. Dunk drops that. Voice gets prioritized because we don't want delays and breakup. And my email then gets the bandwidth that's left, basically.
Maybe just to add on to that, Jeanette, sorry. You know, if you think, and I think this is where the question's coming from, if you think about the old firewall technologies like Checkpoint, and I mentioned one of the customers before where they actually put down a whole lot of firewalls and created this VPN mesh across, all right? That was securing the data site to site. And you had a VPN running from Joburg to Cape Town, Joburg to Durban, Durban to Cape Town, and so forth. So you could secure your data and encrypt it. I think that's the layer of security that's still available from the firewall technologies. But underneath that is the actual SD-WAN component. And the SD-WAN is kind of more the load balancing, the forward area correction, the optimizing, the redundancy and the failover and all that kind of stuff. So again, we mentioned there's SD-WAN and there's SD-WAN secure. What FortiGate has done quite well in their technologies, they've created a hardware device that supports the SD-WAN component very well, but then still has the firewall features from a security perspective as well. I think that's the biggest difference between the SD-WAN and VPNs. VPNs was just, you know, encrypting the data from point A to point B and allowing you remote access for a user to VPN into a site. Whereas with SD-WAN, you know, you've got all those additional features that Jonathan mentioned previously.
Yeah, we use VPNs over our SD-WAN.
Yes. Yes. No, 100%. Okay, so Richard, we're running out of time. Just maybe one or two more questions. Rian is asking, this is obviously from a customer's point of view that want to move over to SD-WAN. How much downtime can one expect when upgrading from an old Fortinet device to an SD-WAN capable device?
Yeah, so Jeanette, I think it's going to come down to making sure that the technologies are all in place before you kind of do that cut over. So is the fiber installed? Is the LTE available, tested and working and ready? We can build templates for the firewall to deploy as quickly as it can connect to the FortiManager. And then it's pretty much racking, and then it's a move of the cables, plugging in the new technologies. If it's existing, it's swinging it over once that FortiGate's live. Excuse me. And then just pushing the config to the site. A lot of the times in this scenario, we pre-build the config before the device even goes on site. So you're looking at, you know, 5 to 30 minutes max downtime if everything's planned accordingly.
Okay, let's see what other ones we have here. VPN we have touched on. Ziad is asking, can SD-WAN resolve interoperability issues with existing network components? For example, IoT devices tied down to specific connectivity methods. Jonathan?
Can I maybe have a go at that one?
Sure, go for it.
So when you speak about IoT and OT, the biggest issue that you normally have from a security perspective is actually segmentation of the networks. They normally become you know, almost on their own environment with no connectivity between the IT and the OT environment. And one of the things that Fortinet does offer, and some of the other firewall technologies as well, is they have enterprise licenses that include industrial or OT functionality. So it can actually secure and allow you to actually communicate across the environment. So we actually have a customer where they have a large OT environment that was traditionally air-gapped from the IT environment. And by using FortiGate now and running the OT environment as a VPN, you know, separate DMZ almost, they actually allow the communication now between the IT environment to the OT through the firewall. And the firewall can actually, you know, provide that security layer that we didn't have before. Will it fix interoperability issues? Yeah, I need a little bit more information about, you know, what you mean by that. I mean, it's not going to translate to anything to that effect. Jonathan, I don't know if I kind of answered.
No, I agree 100%.
What you were trying to say.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not really that side of the SD-WAN. SD-WAN takes what you have and manages how it leaves and comes back. But interoperability, yeah, you'd still be limited by the actual device's functionality to a very, very large degree. So 100%, we would definitely need more information. Maybe it's something we can solve. I don't know if SD-WAN is the solution you're looking for that.
Okay. All right, guys, I think this is all we have time for today. Thank you, Jonathan and Richard, for all your insights today. And to our audience, please feel free to get in touch with us if you need any further information around our offerings. And thank you for joining us. Until next time. Goodbye.
Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, guys.
Take care,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.